Hey, good morning, and welcome to this week's video. And thanks so much for all of you who voted on which video I should post first this week, because it was really hard for me to pick. So the other one is probably going to be up on Monday, so come back to see that one. Let's get into this one here. Before I started this one, I had finished another piece that unfortunately didn't come out quite the way I was hoping it would. I had scraped the damp paper with that nozzle, the tip of those squeezy bottles, and it left a really ugly, like some really ugly lines all over the page. So then I decided, because I have these colors out already, I would utilize them and see what else I could come up with. I hadn't done circles in a while, and for some reason that was speaking to me at that moment. So I decided to incorporate some bubbles into my painting and see what I could come up with. If you haven't watched any of my previous videos where I use these colors or these type of colors, they are just plain acrylic colors that I squeeze a small amount into these dropper bottles, and then I add water to it until I feel that they are diluted enough so that I can use them just like watercolors. And the reason why I am doing this is because, well, there is no reason. I just like experimenting. And that was one experiment that I was really happy with the outcome. So I have quite a bit left over, and I'm just going to use up those colors that I have prepped already, and then I don't know if I will continue working with them or not. But man, when you place a dot into some of the water on your paper, it just spreads so beautifully, and I think just because of that it makes for great videos. It's just fascinating to watch it bloom and move around, almost more so than watercolor will. And when I do these paintings, generally I don't really have an idea ahead of time as to what I want it to look like. Yes, I did know that I wanted to do circles or these bubbles here, and I knew that I didn't want to fill the whole page, meaning I wanted some of the white paper showing. I like to leave some of the white coming through in certain spots. I feel it makes for a much nicer composition. And that's just me personally. You know, you might like it a different way, and that's totally fine. It doesn't always happen though that the page has in a lot of white spaces left over once I'm done with it. So I was kind of trying to be conscious about that and not add too many of those circles. But then as we are heading toward the end of me putting down the colors, you will see what I mean. I had arranged those bubbles in a formation that just didn't look pleasing to my eye. So I ended up adding a little bit more, and therefore covering most of that white that I didn't want to cover. But as it goes with these pieces, you just go with the flow and you make the best out of it. And at the end of the day, first of all, it doesn't matter. Second of all, it turned out really nice. So you just never know. You never know what you're going to end up with. So even though it's not what you had hoped it would look like in the beginning, you might end up with a really great piece. You're probably gonna hear me say those exact words in my next video, because again, I had chosen colors that I was unfamiliar with together, and as I was putting down the colors, I thought to myself, okay, this is another one that is not going to turn out, but I am filming it in real life, so, and commenting on it, so I'm just gonna go with the flow and pretend that I'm going to love it. Well, turns out I don't have to pretend to love it. It just turned out really, really cool, and I love the retro feel it gives me, and I can't wait for you to see it. I like to tape my paper on something, whether it's a cardboard backing or a clipboard, or I have these acrylic sheets. This one is slightly smaller. I have a couple bigger ones, but I like this one because it's matte on one side, and so when I work, my lights won't reflect off of it. So I really enjoy working with this one. But anyway, the point is, I like to tape it onto something because I like to move my pieces around. Because I work with quite a bit of water, I like to tilt my paintings, certain ways, and then I will make the colors blend and move, and sometimes I spray more water on it. It's just a good way for me to keep working instead of having it flat on the surface. So I really enjoy working this way. And I actually kept most of the footage that I had in because it's just so beautiful to watch. These diluted acrylic paints are very forgiving and very fun to watch as they move around the page and mingle and combine with each other. Like that purple and the sienna, the burnt sienna together, it just looked really, really pretty. Then I decided to dry it because I wasn't sure where to go next, and I was eager to finish it because it had gotten late by that time. I don't say I wouldn't normally do that, because I do unfortunately feel very impatient, and then I end up using the hair dryer. And I know that when you let it dry naturally, you can get some really nice, a really nice end product, much nicer than when you force it to dry. So, but I wasn't sure what to do with this middle section. I took some of the watercolor gold that I have, because I felt like it needed a little bit of sheen, and I actually liked that addition. I am not showing it here what I used because I just had it out and I just grabbed it, but I've used it before. It's the same gold palette, and it is going to be listed down in the description box below if you are interested. So I added some of that gold in that middle section, and I should have just added a couple more of those bubbles on top, but I didn't. So I added this one, the pink one, and then I added another blue one in that corner, which, whew, that blue was very, very intense. So I tried to take some of that blue off again, and then instead of cleaning out my brush, I decided to slap some of that into that pink circle that I had in the middle. I tried to tone down the blue a little bit with gold, and it dried okay, but yeah, it was very, very intense. So I was trying really hard to stay away from the white left, what was left of the white paper underneath. And so I felt like it needed a little bit more color. It was a little bit too light for me, because I know that colors usually tend to brighten when as they dry. So I just wanted to bring in just a little bit more of a focal point by adding another circle on top. Also, this is what happens when you dry it with a hair dryer. Sometimes you have a pool of water and paint sitting there, and then it'll just spray somewhere where you didn't want it to spray. So that's another way of why it is a good idea to just let it be patient and let it dry on its own. It was a few days later when I then came in and started my doodling process. And I had a little bit of time to look at it and mull it over to see what I wanted to do. But generally, even though I think about it and I have an idea of what I would like to do, it always ends up different anyway. So I don't know why I stare at it and try to come up with things to doodle on, when then in fact it just turns out a completely different way. But hey, it's part of the process, right? And if you have seen videos of me before, in particular the most recent ones, you will know that I like my starbursts, and I like my dotting tool, and just basic doodles, and this one was no different. The way I arranged these tiles here that I'm drawing, I really, really liked. I liked how offset it turned out. I liked the shapes of them. It's just something a little different. Looks like hair. But yeah, I really enjoyed how these worked out, and I couldn't wait to finish them up. What I wasn't too thrilled about was this one here. But you know, sometimes you just have to commit to something and stick with it. And again, you might end up loving it in the end. Just because I put some lines down doesn't mean they have to stay that way. I can embellish them more. You know, sometimes this is the ugly stage where you are unsure of what your next step is going to be, and then you just go with the flow, and 9 out of 10 times you end up loving it. Spoiler alert, I did not love that one even after it was done. But that's how we grow, right? We just have to keep at it. We have to keep doing the things to learn what we like, to learn what we don't like, to try out new things. It's just part of growing as a budding artist, and it's part of the process. So even though there is parts in this particular piece that I wasn't particularly fond of, I ended up loving the piece all as a whole, and that's what's most important. And I was able to incorporate some new things and make it work. I feel like if we're constantly afraid of messing up or wondering whether we're going to love the outcome or not. We're just going to inhibit ourselves being creative, and that's not the idea behind all of this. This next part that's coming up I thought was really funny, and so I left it in because it perfectly depicts my daily struggles when I do work on these pieces, because sometimes it's really hard to figure out where I want to start, and I want to do something, and then my brain says nope, not there. Yup, nope, not there. And then I get so like antsy that I thought it was too funny to just cut it out, because it just is so, that's me. I have such a determination, and I think I know exactly, oh, this is what I'm going to do here. And then as the pen hits the paper, my brain says, nope, this is not what we're doing over here. So I skipped that part and I moved on to something else. And that's usually what happens. It's just funny. I thought I would leave it in because, and then I came back and I did this, and I ended up not particularly loving it. So maybe I should have just given it a little bit more time. This part here had me cracking up, you guys. Okay, jump scare. This is this is what it reminded me of. Have you ever watched Rugrats? And then I tried to put these bubbles in, trying to make it, not so obvious. But the whole thing I was working on this guy, I had Cynthia on my brain, and I just cracked me up. It was hilarious. And I thought I should share this with you, because this is, where my brain goes sometimes when I see something, and then I can't get rid of it. Like the burrito in one of my previous videos. It just, sometimes you see something and then it just sticks with you. And this was Cynthia for me. So then I tried to come in with the gold dots, and then later on I add more bubbles and more gold dots, and it just it wasn't making it any better. And then she looks like she's running away. It's too funny. So, I hope you get a good laugh out of it, because it was quite hilarious when I when I figured it out. But yeah, anyway, lots and lots of dots. Not as many lines in this one. And this part here felt just a little bit too dainty for me, especially with Cynthia right up top. I wasn't sure if it was just not going to work out, or how I should feel about it. But I left it in. I didn't really add much more to that, and that's okay. You don't have to love every single doodle that you do, or every single paint stroke that you put down on the paper or the canvas. That's totally okay. And yes, I know we can be harsh and hard on ourselves when we critique our own work, and others might completely disagree with you. So don't beat yourself up too much when there's something in there that you hate, or that didn't turn out the way you had intended. So I'm just finishing up with a few more lines here, and then I will call this one done. Overall, I really enjoyed the color scheme. I loved how it dried. I loved the different pastel nuances that it had, and I'm still trying to make her work, guys. I don't know. It's not working out. But the point of the matter is, in the end, overall, I really enjoyed it. And I hope you did too. And thanks again for indulging me by voting on which piece I should do first. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm really trying to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So I'm almost at 5,000. So if you wouldn't mind giving me a subscribe on your way out, I would be ever so grateful. And I will see you next time.